Hey everyone, David here with my first video game review of the year with a brand new style or a brand new format to review video games and movies. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what type of style it's going to be, but I'm just going to go ahead and let you guys watch for yourselves. I feel like my actions would speak much louder than my words. So I feel like I'm going to go ahead and just do the review, and then at the end of it, please let me know what you guys thought of the new style, the new format, and whether or not you guys like it. So here we go. My first video game review is going to be on the only game that I got a request to review from my top 5 video games of 2015 video, which is funny because it's for a game that wasn't necessarily on that list. It was actually in the honorable mentions, and that was for Rise of the Tomb Raider, which at the moment is an Xbox One exclusive, and I believe it made its way onto PC since, and it's estimated to be released on the PS4 by the holiday season of this year, which is practically a whole another year entirely until we see that on the PS4, but it is coming because note that on the box it does not say only on Xbox like Halo or Gears of War does, so obviously it is going to be coming to the competitive consoles, just not anytime soon, probably around the holiday season or so. So, being that this is the only game that got a request to do a review from me, I feel like I need to elaborate more so as to why this game did not end up on my top 5 games of 2015 list and simply just made it onto the honorable mentions. So basically, Rise of the Tomb Raider is a follow-up to the Tomb Raider reboot from Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix, where they tried to take a different direction from the Lara Croft character from back in the day, where she was all about the short shorts and the boobs, and she was kind of sexualized, but she had this campy tone to not only the character herself, but also the adventures that she will go on. From that point onwards, and through a battle of rights, I think at one point there was a lawsuit or that kind of thing. The rights were then handed off to Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics to do a reboot that would ground the character much more on reality, not only in terms of her looks, but also in terms of the pathos that the character had. Make her a much more relatable character and go on adventures that seem a little bit more real, but still retaining some kind of supernatural touch that would make the things much more extravagant and much more fun to play through. So with Rise of the Tomb Raider, Crystal Dynamics pretty much took that first game and kind of built upon it, but only with a couple of notches. The story for Rise of the Tomb Raider is that Lara is now trying to find what the people dub the Divine Source, which is this ultimate source of power that can grant immortality, and it's also something that her father was trying to look for before his untimely passing. And because she feels the need to fulfill this discovery for her father, she gets the drive to pursue her quest, but of course, tailing her is the evil organization known as Trinity. Because there has to be an evil organization that is bent on trying to find the divine source for their own evil purposes, and Lara is trying to beat them to it. And the story is probably, in my opinion, the weakest part of Rise of the Tomb Raider, and that's practically why it didn't make it onto my list, is because I feel like the story was pretty much been there, done that from the get-go. There was nothing that really surprised me about the story. There's certain twists with not only the story but also the characters that I saw a mile away. What I did like about the writing, however, were how third-dimensional some of the characters were. Lara Croft this time around, they take points from the first game about making her a much more developed character and kind of continue that just a little more. In this game, at the beginning of the first game, she was very distraught when she had to kill her first person, her first bandit or enemy. She killed that first guy, and she's like, oh my god, this is terrible. And of course, one of the things that we found kind of iffy about that first game is that she was very distraught about killing that first person, that later on when she, literally 5 seconds later, because it's a video game and you have to kill bad guys, she's just shooting guns and arrows all over the place and shooting people through the head, and just like, okay, from a storytelling perspective, this just didn't click. Here, it feels much more organic because literally from the very first scene, she's already packing heat because we went through that character beat for the first game, so they're paying attention to that, and Lara's already packing a gun with her to make sure that if she needs to take down somebody, she will do it, and she's not that much afraid. She's still very reluctant. She's hoping that she doesn't have to, but if need be, she's willing to do the deed. And one of the, or at least a pair of characters that kind of caught me by surprise in terms of how well-rounded they were and how not two-dimensional they were the villains. At first, they did seem like generic bad guys, but by the end of it, there was a cause for what they were trying to do. And to me, like with many other people, the key to building a great villain or villains is to make antagonists that in their own mindset believe that they are right. And that's fortunately what they went with the villains in Rise of the Tomb Raider. Unfortunately, some other side characters are not necessarily as developed as these three that I just mentioned. Jonah, who returns from the first game, he's a nice character. He's cool. He's very supportive of Lara, and he's that friend that you can call upon. But other than that, there's nothing that much to him. There's this other character named Jacob, and right when he got introduced, the way he talks to Lara, I mean, you can see a bond forming there, but I already know what they're taking it. He was one of the more predictable aspects about the story in this game, and so because of that, nothing really grabbed me. And to an extent, the developers did the same thing with the design and the environment in this game, because don't get me wrong, Rise of the Tomb Raider is a very beautiful game. There's so many opportunities to just gaze upon the vistas. You got, even when you're climbing a mountain and there's like this pounding blizzard just slamming against it, as well as Lara, and you can see her kind of like wincing back and struggling to walk against the wind. It's still very beautiful to look at, and at points the environment does change. Not only are you outside of this mountain, but you also go inside of the mountain. You see these beautiful caverns, and at one point you come across this forest environment that's at the base of the mountain that is very beautiful, and the sound effects are great. And the score is pretty good too, although sometimes I feel like they repeated certain cues, especially towards the beginning. I felt like I heard a particular musical cue over and over and over again. I'm like, guys, change it up, please. But the voice acting is very good too. Camila, I'm blanking on her last name, but the woman who plays Lara Croft herself, she was good too, and everybody does a stupendous job with the voice acting. And I actually kind of wish I would have heard a little bit more of the father. There's these flashback sequences that kind of bookend certain chapters of the game where you can actually see her father and Lara's childhood through her eyes from a POV shot, and how that kind of ties into the current story. And I wish that they would have just explored that just a tiny bit more, because that's something that was very foreshadowed in the first game, and you see a little bit more of it, just not to the amount that I wish they could have had in this game. And that's pretty much the main problem with Rise of the Tomb Raider that I feel like keeps it from, kind of reaching its full potential, is that the story has kind of been there, done that, and doesn't do anything remarkably new. And the environment, though beautiful to look at, is kind of restricted to this one mountain. There's a certain segment early on in the game where Lara travels to Syria, and there's a completely different environment there that you get to explore, and once again, looks beautiful. But I wish that would have happened more times. I wish we could have globe-trotted with Lara, Indiana Jones style, since Indiana Jones is obviously one of the bigger influences to Lara Croft from way back in the 90s when she was barely introduced to the world of PlayStation. I wish we could have done a little bit more of that, but just like in the first game, we are restricted to just this one mountain besides that opening segment. And that was fine for the first game because it's supposed to build upon the character and kind of create her origin, so I didn't mind the fact that the first game was restricted and isolated to just that one island. I didn't mind that. But for the second game, I expected this to be along the likes of Arkham City, where, okay, now break free. Let's go and travel to different environments and see the people and the places that Lara interacts with, and how this pertains to her mission and to her exploration. I kind of wish that they would have done that with Rise of the Tomb Raider. The same exact issue is with the gameplay. Once again, just like in the first game, the gameplay is very, very cool and very fun to play with. And I do feel like it was a tad bit more refined, and maybe it's because I was playing on the Xbox, whereas the first game I did play it on my PlayStation 3. So maybe it's because of the way the controller felt in my hand, but I felt like the firearms and the gunplay as well as the climbing felt just a little bit more refined. And sure, early on in the game, you're going to be tripping over. There's some platforming sections, and obviously I'm going to miss the mark a couple of times early on in the game. But as soon as you hit that learning curve, you're going to have fun with it. You're going to have fun climbing certain places that they do a good job at masking to not make it too obvious that, oh, this is the section that obviously you're going to have to jump onto because it looks different from the other textures. But they do a good job at blending it all together to strike a balance of telling you where to jump, but not making it too obvious that it just kind of breaks the immersion of the environment that you're interacting with. And the AI for the enemies this time around is also very well balanced to where it's a little difficult, but once you strategize, you can use either your bow and arrow or your firearms, whether it be rifles or pistols or whatever, grenades. It's up to you to decide how you approach these enemies, whether or not you want to sneak up from behind or just go in guns blazing. It's up to you, and this game does a good job just like in the first one. It's just that, once again, there's nothing significantly groundbreaking about the gameplay. However, compared to the other aspects like the way the game looks or the story, the gameplay I feel suffers the least because ultimately it's a video game, so when it comes to video games you don't want to add too much because then it just feels cluttered. So I feel like out of all the aspects of this game, the gameplay is the only one that I'm like, okay, it's good. What you did add to the gameplay is not, it is more than enough, and I didn't feel like they needed to add anything too significant. So I'll give them a little bit of a pass on that because besides the returning mechanics from the first game, you got a couple of new features, mainly in terms of items that you get to utilize along the environment. Like, you can actually, like, Lara finally comes up with the idea to string a rope to her little hook blade that she brings back once again from the first game. It's literally the exact same hook, and throw it so that she now has a grappling hook. Why did you not think of that in the first fucking place? Anyways, she comes up with the idea to do that, and because of that, this allows her to traverse certain gaps that are just too wide to make just a simple leap. Because Lara, unlike in those first games, she's a human, and this game reminds you that every time you die. Whether it be a pull through the head or her getting crushed by something, it's brutal. It's rated M for a reason, because they're going for a much more realistic and intimidating approach to raising the stakes. And so these features like this, with the grappling hook, as well as these arrows that allow you to actually climb on top of the arrows to reach certain platforms that you couldn't reach before. Not only does this make the gameplay fun, but it also increases the replayability a little bit, because there's certain areas that are optional, but obviously you look at the terrain and you're like, there's no way I can climb this, because certainly I'm going to gain something later on that's going to let me climb up that thing, such as these arrows. And so when you do gain those abilities and those features and those brand new weapons and items and all that jazz, you can then jump back to the environment that you were in before, and you can now reach that platform that you couldn't before and unlock new collectibles and gather all the side stuff that you weren't able to access before, because besides the main story, you do have other things that you can do on the side. Now here comes another little nitpick. It's not too big of a deal, but this game does introduce some side missions that are given to you by some people in the environment that you could interact with. And even though it is a nice little distraction from the main quest, and it does give you the opportunity to earn XP and money and equipment and supplies to be able to upgrade Lara, as well as her weapons and her tools that you can once again upgrade in the upgrade system, just like in the first game, where you can increase the abilities that Lara has, whether or not she's a little bit more invulnerable to bullets, or she can she has better strength with her bow and arrow. You can do that once more. What I find just a little strange is that these side missions are introduced in the way that an open world RPG would. And this game is rather linear. It mimics similarly that first game, where you just go along the path, and it's again, it's a Tomb Raider game. It's linear. It's not supposed to be open world. So when you got these little crevices where you got this one person just standing there and be like, "Hey, I got a job for you," it's just kind of weird, because Lara's like on this on this path, with her eyes set on this goal. Like, I gotta beat this thing. And then this guy's like, "Hey, wait a minute, I need you to collect something." What? It just feels kind of off with the tone or with the genre that Rise of the Tomb Raider is trying to strike. The only thing on the side that I do think is worth doing and does mesh well with the original gameplay and the original narrative structure of the story and the game itself are the tombs that return from the first game that offer these puzzles. Besides the puzzles that you do have to solve in the main story quest, there's also these tombs that have little puzzles within themselves, and when you beat them, they yield certain rewards that can help you make the game a whole lot easier, besides the stuff that you get to upgrade on your own, and they're very fun to do. And Granted, there's plenty of other things to do, but they're mainly for the completists, and I'm not a completist, so obviously when I hit the pause menu and I saw that huge list of, oh, collect these documents or collect these things, sure, I would do them as I would go along, but only that. I won't go out of my way to do that, but if you're that type of gamer, feel free to go crazy with the content that Rise of the Tomb Raider does bring you. Besides that, Rise of the Tomb Raider is an excellent game that is very well made and definitely one of the best from last year, but the potential that it could have reached is what keeps me from highlighting it as truly one of the best, and that's why I made it onto my honorable mentions. And it's a shame. It's a shame whenever I see a game that could have taken that extra step, but there's certain aspects of it that I feel like it was taken that were taken too much from the original, and they just didn't go through with it. So for that, I give Rise of the Tomb Raider a very high 8 out of 10. So that about does it for my review. If you have played Rise of the Tomb Raider, be sure to let me know in the comments below. If you have not played it and would like to purchase it after watching my review, then be sure to use the link in the description below. It would really help me out a lot. Thank you guys for watching, and if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go party with Lara Croft, because after playing this game, I am convinced that she is a raver, judging by the amount of glow sticks that she's got. Look, she's ready to party. I don't know how to dance, so I'm a humiliation. I'll see you guys next time.